Yes, sir. Ours to see. 1984. You know the drill. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
Where do you stand on some form of reparations for black people?
Well, look, I think that we have got to address that, again, it's back to the inequities. America has a history of 200 years of slavery. Mm-hmm. We had Jim Crow. We had legal segregation in America. The Voting Rights Act was only strong for 50 years, and then they wiped it out with this United States Supreme Court in the Shelby decision. Mm-hmm. To the point that 22 states immediately thereafter put in place laws that one court found were crafted with surgical precision to have black people not be able to vote. So we've got to recognize, back to that earlier point, people aren't starting out on the same base in terms of their ability to succeed. And so we have got to recognize that and give people a lift up. And there are a number of ways to do it. Part of my initiative, again, around the LIFT Act is that same point. Lifting people up who are making less than $100,000 a year. What I want to do about rent is the same thing. What we need to do around education and understanding disparities, what we need to do around HBCUs. But we have a history of racism in America.
So you are for some type of
Yes, I am.
reparation? Okay.
Yes, I am.
This bill titled the Dismantling DEI Act is an utter disgrace. Having sat and read the text in preparation for today's markup, I have yet another example to tell my constituents about the unserious work of the Republican Party. Now, I'll work with anyone serious about progress who wants to center the people who call this country home. This isn't it. The Committee on Oversight has the broadest jurisdiction in the entire House of Representatives to investigate any topic it chooses, but we are debating legislation that denies the sky is blue, water is wet, and racism is real. The major provision of the bill says to ban anything that acknowledges racism. And a few pages later in the exact same bill, there are multiple provisions discussing the presence of racism. This Republican approach is as predictable as it is nonsensical. On one hand, they're saying that racism does not exist. On the other hand, they are saying there is rampant reverse racism. Well, how do you reverse something that never existed in the first place? Riddle me that. While this Republican policy may have a new name, it's the same old tired game. Look, y'all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. Do you all know your history? Do you know American history? The original Constitution counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person. During World War II, the federal government forcibly relocated and incarcerated 110,000 Japanese Americans. The FHA practiced redlining in the 1930s and 60s to deny mortgages to black Americans, which is why we have a racial wealth gap today. I could go on. The GI Bill, which is supposed to be race neutral, denied access to black Americans, denying them equal access to education and housing benefits, which is why we do not have generational wealth. Don't talk to me about merit when those black servicemen fought for our freedoms. And I'd also just like to take a personal note of privilege to say, please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouths. Your perversion of his words and his mission when his children have asked you to stop invoking his name and perverting his work when he was a proud and unapologetic black man fighting for equality for black Americans and all marginalized people. So you all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. But I'm not surprised that you would deny American history. What I am, though, is committed. Committed to speaking truth to power, committed to standing up for marginalized communities and vulnerable people, committed to ensuring that everyone has equal opportunity to buy a house, to work a job, to pursue higher education, and to live in a society that is fair and just.
My heart is extremely heavy right now. And I hope all who hear this message and have the power to do something will act. While I, like so many of you, care deeply for the families separated at our border and believe that assisting them is the just thing to do, I question how the president of this nation has it in his heart to consider this for reparations for black people who have endured generations of physical and relational, psychological, legislative, and yes, economic trauma.
Liberation starts with money.
As my father said, we must recognize that we can't solve our problem now until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. This radical redistribution must include, in my words, comprehensive reparations for black people. Comprehensive reparations for black people.